Hello, my name is Rachel King, and I'm going to be talking to you about two literacy learners who are upperclassmen at Langsburg High School in Mrs. Eggleston's fifth hour conservation class. Their names have been changed to protect their privacy. Castiel is a student who is very open with interpersonal sharing, creative, involved in color guard at her school, and extremely interested in the show Supernatural. Lily is very shy in the classroom, but very attuned to the relationship she has with her friends and what's trending on Facebook and Snapchat. My focal students bring very colorful literacy experiences to Mrs. Eggleston's classroom. Castiel loves works of fiction in the form of blogs and other forms of fan fiction, as well as multimedia experiences through YouTube and Netflix. When she's not at school, she can usually be found reading blogs and writing poems on the way to school or in her room after school. However, she does not enjoy reading any type of expository text. Lily brings an extensive range of communication skills from verbal and texting phone conversations, as well as reading Facebook posts and memes. She tells me she reads much more than she writes, especially when she goes into a phase to read a popular series such as The Hunger Games or the Twilight series. When she gets into one of these phases, she will be engrossed in these books for 6 to 8 hours a day and usually can complete a series in one day. Moreover, both focal students have skills in using text for problem-solving purposes using context and general header clues. However, they both have a heavy reliance on the teacher and internet search engines to problem solve when they cannot find the answer in the text within a couple minutes. Lastly, both focal students love the use of music, especially Castiel when she puts her poems to song and appreciates the poetry of other artists such as Taylor Swift. I have noticed that both students seem to be highly influenced by the literary experiences of their family members, especially the ones that they are closest to. For Castiel, her father reads to help him fall asleep at night, and her mother is an English teacher who loves fiction and poetry. Castiel is also highly influenced by her father's experience in the army. Whenever her father is deployed, she writes poetry whenever she has a spare moment to help her get through the worrying and depressing experience of missing him and worrying for his safety. Lily's mother only really reads posts on Facebook. Other than that, Lily does not see her closest family members write or read much at all. However, they do rely on communication and primarily read and write for functional purposes. To me, it makes a lot more sense to think about the influence of each focal student's family life to build a more specific context around each student's experiences. During my first visits with the focal students, I have worked with them on reading and answering questions out of a reading packet. I have also worked with them while they wrote their own exam using multiple types of questions with varying difficulty. Much of what I have witnessed or discussed with my focal students has been discussed in the text of our TE 302 class regarding the ideas and principles of literacy. In the Alverman text on page 7, I recall learning that teaching students to generate their own questions leads to active learning and improved comprehension of text. This was exemplified when I saw the students writing their own exams and exam key with multiple types and levels of difficulties of questions. I also recall from the text that many students have a heavier reliance on the teacher as a source rather than the text itself. This was very true to my classmates, as I noticed earlier. In addition, multiple readings have discussed that most people consider literacy to be limited by traditional modes of reading and writing. Many students also believe this to be the case when I first began talking to them until I defined literacy in a broader sense to open them up to the possibilities of communication and multimedia. According to the focal students, they both believe hands-on material eases the stress of the density of text, which was mentioned in articles on group-worthy tasks, discussion methods, and reading exercises. From what I have seen in class, I have only witnessed the traditional modes of content literacy used in Mrs. Eggleston's class. However, the students have told me that she typically assigns vocab, reading, and traditional note-taking exercises from an expository text, then moves on to hands-on activities, movies, and multiple modes of assessment. Lastly, I have not seen any disciplinary literacy techniques, probably because I have not seen her whole process for a unit yet. As I usually believe with any experience in the classroom, I believe a significant amount of learning occurred between me and my focal students. In addition to explaining to them that literacy is not limited to traditional modes, I believe they learned from me that we have similar interests in both reading, writing, communication, and the newer forms of literacy through multimedia. Ultimately, we are very much alike when it comes to our literacy skills, even though we are fairly different in age and level of education. I learned a lot from my literacy learners as well. I learned that their literacy skills were largely influenced by the people they feel they are closest to. I also affirm my knowledge regarding the general avoidance, difficulty, and lack of interest in expository reading. Rather, they prefer to rely on the teacher and the internet as primary or higher sources of knowledge than the text. If given the opportunity, I would probably continue to work on exploring multiple strategies used with science reading. I would also like to observe the effects of discussion with science texts as well as group tasks. In addition, I would like to encourage Lily to explore her own ideas, because she was fairly dependent on Castiel for a way to structure and answer the questions I asked them. I tried to take turns asking questions, but a lot of the time she would not answer until Castiel answered first. As a mentor teacher, I would probably continue to develop Mrs. Eggleston's layout of her unit with a variety of activities and assessments from her texts using social media, blogs, and discussions to better fit the needs of my focal students. I would also try to encourage a higher dependence guidance on the text rather than just giving the answer when they are stuck. It would try to incorporate it more than just for an introduction to a unit or a topic. Ultimately, I would increase the diversity and variety within assignments and match them to better fit the students' skills as literacy learners.